Here's an Advent scene, the Annunciation to Mary by Robert Campen. And notice that this Dutch painter has painted this scene from the Bible, but painted it as a contemporary 15th century Dutch scene. Here's a little Dutch town in the background. Here's Mary reading her Bible, and the angel comes in to Mary and tells her she is going to have a baby. And there are various symbols around Mary of the symbolic of the Incarnation, like this fire screen that lets some light through from the fire, but also protects one from the fire. This brass kettle here, Mary is to be a vessel for God. Incarnation is about that kind of wonder of the enfleshment of God. The great truth that, is really the heart of the Christian faith, that God Almighty refused to stay aloof, obscure, became among us, and self-defined, God in the flesh, God with us. Well, that's a kind of a different way of thinking about the practice of the Christian faith. We speak of going to church. We normally think of religion as something that we do. It's a means by which we get closer to God. Why? It's a way that we can better align ourselves with God. The Incarnation, though, speaks of a different truth, and that is that God Almighty did not wait for us to climb up to God. God climbed down to us. That God came to us. Down through the centuries, you can think of all the human attempts, the way we tried to be smart enough or good enough or holy enough to climb up to God. And then on a starlit night, in the first century, in an obscure part of the world, God Almighty climbed down to us and became one of us. Mary, a peasant woman living in Judea, unmarried, is told that she's going to have a baby. And this baby would be a blessing to the whole world. Isn't it wonderful, says the Incarnation, that we don't have to heft ourselves up to God, but that God Almighty shows up and comes among us. That's the wonder that we're exploring in the wonder of the Incarnation. We looked at this Annunciation, where a virgin named Mary, a poor peasant woman, unmarried, is surprised by this angel saying, "Hello, Mary, God's got plans for you." Has there been some time in your life when you really have experienced God somehow enfolding you into God's work, in God's plans in the world? Think about that as you think about Incarnation. And here's the second question, and that is, the Gospels portray the birth of Christ as an embarrassment, a shock, of course, to Mary, who was unmarried, and an embarrassment to Joseph, who is told that his fiancée is going to be bringing forth a baby. Maybe that's meant to remind us that sometimes God's intrusions among us are embarrassing, dislocating, surprising. Have you experienced that in some of God's enlistment of you? That's incarnation too.